Hey everybody, this video is going to be a little different tonight. Instead of kind of my usual technical topics, I want to talk tonight about managing teams. And for most of my career, I've managed small and large teams. But currently I'm in a position where as an independent consultant, I'm only managing one team. And that team is a team of models. And I want to talk about that because one of the things I've learned is that managing a team of models is remarkably similar to managing teams of people. And I want to go through 5 ways in which I think that's true. So the first thing is you have to build the right team for your work and delegate accordingly to the members of that team. So the team that I'm currently using is a team of 9 different models. And the reason I use so many is that they all have really different strengths and weaknesses, even within the same class. And I'll talk a bit about kind of why I've picked each of the ones I have. And I'm not saying you necessarily need 9 models, but definitely it's not a case of one size fits all. And so Claude Sonnet 3.7, as I've talked about in some of my other videos, is really my workhorse. It's got strong reasoning, it's great at data analysis, it's really got a nice UI, it manages artifacts really well, you can visualize the results of your code right in the model often. But it also has some drawbacks. One of the things is it has a tendency to kind of overcomplicate coding and to kind of get lost in the weeds pretty quickly. A lot of people I know have expressed some frustration about this. And what I've done to counter this, because I like the strength so much, is I've paired it with another teammate, which is O1 Pro. And O1 Pro has really strong reasoning skills. It's really good at simplifying code. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll start with Claude, and then if Claude gets in the weeds, I'll take what Claude's generated and give it to O1 Pro and say, simplify and debug. Similarly, DeepSeek R1 is great at DAX and M coding. It's the best model I've seen yet at those things, but it's incredibly verbose in its reasoning. It's actually kind of annoying. And the other thing, in addition to it being annoying, is because it's so verbose, it tends to chew up a lot of tokens in the reasoning output. GPT-4o is kind of the old hand. It's been around the longest of the ones I use. It's great at multimodal stuff. It's one of the few that if you throw at things like a BIM file, it'll know exactly what that, excuse me, what that is right offhand. You don't have to feed it the text and explain. It's low cost, it's fast, but on the con side, it's not super smart relative to the more advanced reasoning models. Perplexity Sonar is a good example of where you need to recognize that your models, like employees, are trained differently. They went to different schools. Some went to graduate school. Some went straight into the workforce, and so they've got different experience. And for example, GPT-4o has a training cutoff of I believe October 2023, so it's pretty old. Whereas Perplexity Sonar, you can ask it about sports scores that day. It's very up to date. It's the most current, but it's not particularly good at anything else. The next two are Flash models, the Gemini Flash and the GPT-03 Mini. Both small models, really fast, very inexpensive. The Gemini Flash model is the fastest model I use. GPT-03 Mini is fast, but not as fast, but it's a lot smarter. It's a reasoning model, not just an LLM. And then the last two are really kind of specialty cases. Gemini 1.5 Pro is really terrible at most things, but it's got an enormous context window. You can throw it 10 times the amount of information you can with Claude, and so one of the things I like to do with 1.5 is take a really huge document and say, boil this down to the most essential 10%. And it does a really nice job at that, and then I can feed that information into smarter models. Llama 3.28b is a small model that can run locally on consumer grade hardware. You don't need a stack of GPUs to run it. It's not particularly smart relative to the other models, but it runs locally, and so it's great at masking high sensitivity data. You're not exposing it to the cloud or to any other models. So for really sensitive stuff, if it can't handle the processing itself, what I do is I use Llama 3.2 to mask and anonymize the data, and then push it out to a different model that is smarter on the reasoning. So you can kind of see how these all fit together. And one question you may be asking yourself is, how much does this cost? How many subscriptions do you have? And the answer is too many. But what I've found is something called Open Router, and I've talked about this recently. And this is an amazing way to access basically almost every model that's out there. It's got a list of about 250 different models. You can see in 12 days, and I've been hitting this thing really hard most days. I've spent a total of under $2 in close to 2 weeks. And so it's way cheaper even than just one $20 subscription to Claude or to OpenAI. And you can access almost all the models. The only one I'm aware of that it doesn't have is the O1 Pro model that I talked about, and that's the $200 a month model. So I think you can get by without that. As I say, I like to pair it with Claude, but the neat thing about this is if you look here, what it's got is it's got kind of a way to scout your models, and so you can filter them based on modality, based on context length, pricing, speed, what it's best at, whether it's got the flexibility and the parameters that you want, who the providers are, if you have particular providers you like. And so you can really experiment and kind of recruit and build your team according to the work that you do and the tasks that you are going to assign to a model. The next thing is being crystal clear in your instructions. Prompting still matters. It probably matters less with the new reasoning models, but it still does matter. And some of the studies I've read say that by prompting clearly, you can get about 5 to 10% more out of a given model than someone who prompts less clearly. And this, again, this goes back to good management technique with your team. You want to be clear in what you're asking for. You want to provide them the full information that they need. As I mentioned, kind of using other models to kind of distill information down that will fit the context window. Related to that is you don't want to assign too much. There's a temptation, particularly if you write really detailed prompts, to kind of give the model a huge task and just see if it can run start to finish. And the answer is it usually can't. That even the best models now, the way I've found that's more productive is to go in stages and basically, give an idea of what you're trying to do, but then focus on kind of the first, in some sense, if you're thinking about it like a video game, it's the first save point. It's saying, okay, like here's a critical part of the task, and let's get to that point, get our code working, and then we'll build on top of that. And I found that's a much more productive, less frustrating way to build than to just give it a large task with a bunch of subtasks underneath. The next thing is be a knowledgeable manager. I think we all like to work for people who understand the work we do. And what I've found is that AI models are no different, that you're able to really work hand in hand with an AI model when you understand the language you're working in. And one of the things I experienced recently was I was trying to build something in Python, and I'm not good in Python. It's just something I've never really had the time or the the impetus to learn, but I'm really good in R. And so what I did is I started off building in Python because I thought, okay, not everybody, but most people are more facile in Python than R, and so let me build in the more common language. And what I found was that I really bogged down because the AI code wasn't getting to the right endpoints, and I didn't know enough to prompt it clearly and direct it and kind of get it out of the ditch when it went off track. I immediately went over to R and had a totally different experience, that I was able to look at the code, immediately know, okay, here's where it's running off track, here's how I can prompt it to get back on track, here's additional information I can give it. And I was just a much better manager of the team in a language I knew. And then what I was able to do is, when we got it working in R, I was able to convert it over to Python. And most of these frontier models will do a great job converting something from one language to another. But that's a very different experience than programming in that language. And so, kind of be mindful not just of the model constraints, but of your constraints as well. The last thing is, don't overwork them. Just like your team, surprisingly, AI models need breaks. And if you get in this long exchange, what's going to happen is you're going to be pushing a lot of input context back and forth through the model. And Claude will even warn you that you're going to burn up your tokens faster when you get in these long, complex conversations. And so the way to do it is to take a break, start a new chat, kind of brief it on what's gone on in the previous chat. Feed it the code that is the best code that was generated from that chat, and kind of start afresh. And by doing that, you'll find that the model goes off track a lot less and you burn a lot less tokens. So that's kind of a quick overview of the ways in which I've found it most effective to recruit and manage the models that I use. Be very interested to hear your experience, whether you've got additional tips and kind of what your teams look like. So as always, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.